bloopers section.
Oh, God.
Okay,
Yeah.
Colorado Mavericks, little winemaker tasting, little training video for you guys today. I've got Matt Rawn from Two Mountain Winery in Yakima Valley, Washington. Hi, Matt.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
So, hi, guys. As Montana was so nice to say, my name is Matt Rawn. I'm from Two Mountain in Washington State, not the district. And I am located in the Yakima Valley, in a little town called Zilla, which you guys know where Washington is, and you guys know the valley. I know you guys dealt with our wines, but also other wines from the state for a while. And we're at the western end of the Yakima Valley. The sub-AVA that we are in is the Rattlesnake Hills. And what separates that apart from kind of the rest of the state is that we're a little bit higher elevation. We're 100% south-facing vineyards in this area. So we maximize the long summer days and nights and, the cool weather, but we're also protected in the wintertime, so we don't have as much of the winter damage or influence as some other places do. And we have really shallow soils. So when we taste all these wines, and when you taste them with your customers, and you'll notice that all of them have this really nice minerality and kind of acidity to them. The tannins are finessed in the reds. The Riesling, which we'll get into in 1 second, is really bright and kind of floral and fruity, but you really pick up that minerality. And as you guys know, Riesling is one of those wines that will absolutely it wants to tell you where it's from. And I think when you taste this one, you'll notice that it's from the Rattlesnake Hills and from our area. But one of the quick things that really just sets us apart from a vast majority of the wineries in Washington is that we're 100% estate fruit. So my brother and I own the winery and the vineyard together. I planted the original vineyard back in 2000 when I graduated from college. My brother came on a couple years after that, and then we bought it. We bought it in 2006, the October of 2006, and we bought it from our uncle who passed away. And so we've been taking it from there. And so when we bought it, we committed to being estate fruit, 100% on varietals, in perpetuity. The red blends, yeah, we'll see. I mean, we're hoping to stay estate fruit, but we're still there. But in the future, it may be 50% estate fruit, but we'll always have it in every single wine. We think it's important. It shows the personality of us and the place, and shows the sense of Zilla and Yakima Valley and Washington State and all the other good stuff that is out there. And with that being said, we also do vineyard management. So not only do we own our own vineyards, but we also do vineyard management for people. So we consider ourselves to be wine growers 1A and winemakers 1B. And then we get to work with you guys as well. So we're totally vertical. I mean, you could almost call us, in today's lexicon, we're the farm to table winery. 20 years ago, it was the state fruit, and 10 years ago, it was kind of know your producer, and now it's farm to table in the food scene. And that's kind of where we sit, is in any one of those kind of categories. But some of the vineyards that we manage that you may see out there in the marketplace, if you're familiar with Andrew Will out in the Colorado market, they're Two Blondes vineyard. We grow that for them. Deneen Vineyards is one that may start showing up down there and on different labels from Washington State, and that's us as well. Same with Pollard, and then we have Copeland and a bunch of others. So our hands are in about 60 different wineries within Washington State as far as the amount of fruit that we grow and who we sell to. But we try to keep what we think is the best for ourselves out of our own estate fruit, and all the stuff we manage is dispersed to everybody else, which is just as good as well for everything else that we make or sell it, grow, whatever it is. So with that said, that's kind of the nickel tour of who we are. Let's get into wines, because I know that's what we're here for.
Yeah, so you guys know, right now, today's date is May 26th, in case you're watching this in the future, but May 26, 2020, and we have in stock, we have Hidden Horse, we have Merlot and Riesling, and we're going to taste, or Matt's going to taste us through those wines. And then we also have Cabernet Franc on order. So that's always kind of a awesome, popular one as well. So we should be seeing that either this week or next week for sure. So if you're looking at inventory and wondering about kind of low stock on the Hidden Horse and the Riesling, it's coming.
Yeah, that's a great point. And also, we typically, just for future reference, don't ever get scared about stuff being out of stock or low stock, because Fuad does a good job of ordering, and from the time he places the order to the time it gets to you guys is usually within 10 days. So it's very quick.
Awesome.
I mean, I get the order, I'll pack it, we ship it out in the next 2 or 3 days, and then it's gone, and it's to you guys. So don't ever worry about that. If you ever have questions, you can always call me directly and find out how in the hell we're doing with stuff. Be like, Matt, what the? Where is all this stuff? And we'll get it figured out for you.
And Matt, will you just tell them your phone number real quick in case they don't have your card?
Yeah, absolutely. My phone number 509-969-5545. My email is matt@twomountainwinery.com. And I'll have this all in the supplier, in our supplier folder that I'll give to Montana and the crew there. So
Okay.
you guys can have it.
Yeah,
Feel free to reach out to me at any point in time.
Cool.
What's that?
I said thank you.
Yeah, of course. So anyway, the Riesling. It is 100% Riesling. This is a vast majority of it comes from the Copeland vineyard. So this is actually the first one that we've done that's not vineyard designated. We pulled from a couple of different vineyards this time. I like it really, really well, quite honestly. It has this wonderful, I mean, at least for my palate, it has this kind of wonderful kind of almost ripe pineapple, kind of overripe green apple type of thing going on with it, along with like this kind of honeysuckle characteristic that's starting to show up right now, which I love. And it has, I mean, it just kind of tastes like tropical Northwest type of thing, if you can even imagine what that would be like, right? It has really, really bright acidity, and I'm tasting this at room temperature also, guys. So I'm not tasting it where it's chilled. But I tend to like it better at room temperature when we're doing tasting notes and being able to figure out the nuances of it. Obviously, when I'm drinking it for dinner or whatever, I want it cold or chilled, but not at this stage of the game. I also get like almost like some like pomelo that's in there, and like I said, some honey, a little bit of honeysuckle meets lemongrass type of thing. And basically, I mean, you're kind of getting the idea what the characteristics are that we get. And there's this floral note that's in there too, that, like I said, that kind of honeysuckle, but there's something else, and I'm kind of struggling with the other flower that I'm tasting in there, but you'll get the picture when you guys taste it. But the one thing that I get in this thing that I love, and it's every single vintage, is it gets that minerality in there. Like you can taste that kind of flinty stoniness that you get from really mineral-driven vineyards of Riesling around the world, and we have one that's very similar. The soil where the Riesling is out of Copeland is basically a gravel bar that we have it sit on, or it's planted in. So it's sand and gravel and caliche and river rock, and you guys have all heard of the Lake Missoula floods. And if you look at the rocks that are out in the Riesling portion of Copeland Vineyard, and then you happen to be in the great state of Montana and go up the Blackfoot River, I guess it is. It's the rock on the side of the road there, in our vineyard is the same rock. It's pretty crazy, and you can taste it, and that's what's really cool about it. But it's hot here in the summertime, and so we can kind of crop it and change the canopy a little bit more than what people do if they are reliant on other growers. And so we kind of keep that exposure in the grapes kind of all year long, so we can kind of keep those kind of bright, kind of warmer meets kind of more acidic type of fruit characteristics in the fruit. We really enjoy it that way. This wine, I believe the 2019 was only like 0.2 or 0.3% residual sugar, so it's dry wine. The pH was about 3.2, I believe, so it's fairly low. But honestly, I don't care, and I'll send all the numbers to you guys. But I'm more into how does it taste and how does it smell. For Riesling, that's my number one thing is it's aromatics and flavor, and beyond that, it's just gravy. So this is where it goes.
Absolutely.
There, so.
And also, guys, there is a video that Matt did on this wine that's in the Dropbox, and these are something that I'm trying to get a lot of our suppliers to do. He's kind of leading the by example on this. Little short video that's just focused on a specific wine. So it's something that we can tie to a shelf talker or a sign and create a QR code. You guys have seen this stuff a lot. But more and more just working on getting some like good quality things that are focused on a specific wine so that we can use them in that way. So keep an eye out, look in the Dropbox folder for that. And then he probably has, I know Matt, you probably have a few for other wines too, but we'll try and get him for the 4 wines that we have in inventory.
Yeah, I actually just finished the rest of them today. In fact, one of the ones I finished today was the Hidden Horse.
Yeah,
I was uploading it before.
And we will we will have them. We can put them on our YouTube channel too. So lots of
Yeah,
resources.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They're on Vimeo right now, and you can put them, you can take them, have free access to them, whatever you want to do with them.
Thank you.
All right. So let's get into the hidden horse. This has kind of been the, no pun intended, this has been the workhorse for you guys and for us. It's a non-vintage red blend. It is, but it's batch numbered. So although there are a lot of non-vintage red blends out there, I think typically a lot of them are they're getting kind of in that upper middle price tier. And you kind of never know what you're really going to get, but you're kind of buying it on name sometimes. This one is, we kind of call her a gateway, but it's also kind of just that one wine that we want it to be super approachable. We want it to be a serious wine, but it's like $15 on the shelf or something like that. So we want it to be very serious but approachable for the consumer, so it hits all consumers in that stage of the game.
And it's
Hits the
also
people that are
something you
trying.
can make lots and lots of, right? And I know like Joy Pharmacy does a boatload. So for any of our team that's watching that haven't taken this wine out or haven't played with it and shown it to people, show it to people, because I've shown it many times over the years, and it's a 100% success rate. Really, like you take it out for a day. Now we're not obviously tasting people the way that we used to. It's kind of like you can't take a sample around. We're kind of, it's kind of limited to one account, but this is definitely something that you can have a lot of success with. Make some friends.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct on that one. And the success part is what we hope for. The availability thing is what I can promise you. Is that this is the wine that we promise we'll never run out of. This is the one wine that we don't make any guarantees will be 100% the state in the future, but I've already done blending trials with other places around the state just to get proactive about things, and we know that it will be a minimum of 50% of state fruit no matter what happens in the future. So we know it'll always be there, so it'll always feel and taste like Two Mountain. It's just a matter of availability from our own stock, but then it'll never be unavailable to you guys. But this is basically Bordeaux varieties and friends. So what makes up somewhere between 95% of this wine every time we bottle it is Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Malbec in that descending order. The percentages change, as you guys can imagine. It's a red blend. But the remaining 5, 7, 8% that's usually in there might be a little Syrah or some Lemberger or maybe some Triga or Counois or Cinsault or whatever the case is, because we grow like 30
it's so crazy,
different
all the varieties that you grow. These guys have Liga Nacional and like Saint
Well, we
Laurent
just bought a
and
vineyard that has
weird shit that we love.
I don't have any Saint Laurent, thank God. But
I
but we
thought
did
maybe I made that up.
No, we did just buy a vineyard that has orange muscat in it. I don't know
Oh,
what the
that's
hell
what it
we're doing
was.
with orange muscat. Yeah, hopefully we can sell those grapes. But the main thing is that we grow a ton of different varieties around here, and some of them we bring in as experimental to see if we want to make it as a future varietal and labeled as such. Some of them we don't. We just know it's going straight into the blend. And what we do is we'll take and we have the base of those 4 varieties, and then the last like 3, 5, 7% that may need to be filled in here is kind of filler. I mean, as long as it's not hurting the wine, I don't have a problem putting it in there, because we've been able to experiment with stuff. And you guys can use this phrase, and I know I'm probably about the only guy out there that'll actually say this, this is our leftovers, but it's leftovers with a purpose. And I always say it's leftovers with a purpose because I personally love leftovers out of the refrigerator or extra little barrels that we have here and there, or whatever the case is. And so this wine sets it apart from most other $15 retail red blends that are out there is not only is it batch numbered, but what we do is we make the varietal programs first. So Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec. Well, Malbec we don't even make a varietal, but a labeled varietal. But you get the point. And the barrels that don't make it into the main varietals, because let's say on the Cabernet Sauvignon we get to the oak profile we want, and the Merlot we get to the tannin profile, and the Cab Franc we get to the volume that we want, and whatever else is the case. There's always barrels that are beautiful and like left over. So what are we going to do with them, right? I'm like, you guys don't want to see 2 Merlot SKUs from me. Like I don't want to make 2 Merlot SKUs. And so we take these barrels, and some of them are brand new barrels, some of them are completely neutral. I mean, basically they're all barrels that have no business being a $15 retail bottle of wine. And we make the red blend out of it, and we make a big ass batch of it. and we'll bottle it in small doses out of the same batch just so we can help keep that cost down. It's more of that kind of just-in-time inventory method, but it works for us. That way we're not storing a whole bunch of inventory that's just collecting dust, and then you guys don't have to deal with the consequences because we overproduce and now we got to charge more because or fire sale things periodically, but it allows us to be able to keep the consistency not only of product but also of pricing for you guys, which I know is paramount for a lot of things. This wine is designed to be kind of that on-premise, off-premise kind of fits both areas. On the off-premise side of things, it's designed, like I said, in that price point, but it's actually, I mean, it's really a serious wine that's very approachable flavor-wise and structure-wise, because like when I taste this and smell it, it's super inviting, it's super soft, but there's good tannins to it. We want the customers that are very astute to be like, wow, that is one hell of a value. And we want the customers that are kind of scared and kind of the deer in the headlights, like they're historically have been just buying like the I hesitate to name the names, but the more laboratory wines that are out there that may start with an M or an A or something of that nature. We want them to be able to step up from those and get into this and be like, wow, I didn't really break the bank, but I really like that wine. And they're graduating into the next style, the next class, the next quality of wine, and getting into actual wine and not juice at that stage of the game. Yeah. And then on the on-premise side, we want this one to be the one that just does not interrupt the moment. Obviously in COVID world, this is a little bit different story, but prior to COVID, it was the one that we wanted people to be able to just have a glass at wherever they are and they just automatically order another one. It's not interrupting the conversation or the dinner or the appetizers or the reading of the book or whatever the hell it is that they're doing. It's just that natural, like, yeah, I'll have another glass. That's really good. I'll have another glass and just go that route. And so on premise and off premise do really, really well with this wine. So
cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, let's do Merlot next. So Merlot, otherwise known as Merlot around these parts. We love Merlot. But that's one of those things about this valley and about Washington State, about Yakima Valley, and about Rattlesnake Hills is that the varieties that tend to need a little bit more acid in them to make the characteristics pop. And so it's, when you taste it, you're like, that's Merlot, right? It's not boring. It's not flabby. It's not blasé, and it's not just a shitty Bordeaux variety. We keep those characteristics here. Like Riesling is another one. Like we've all had wines that should have a little acid to make the varietals and the characteristics pop. And when they've been blown out and flat and flabby, they're shitty. What do you do with them? And Merlot's a great example. Bad Merlot, when it's boring and flabby, you're just like, I don't know what that is. That's either a bad Merlot, a bad Cab Franc, a bad Cab Sauv, a Malbec with no spice in it, but it's nondescript as all hell. And in this area, with our growing conditions in our region, our elevation, and everything else, we keep really good acidity in things. And I think Merlot, Cab Franc are really good reds to be able to show that with, because in our opinion, when Merlot is good, all you have to say is it's Merlot, and it kind of just speaks for itself. That's why we also in-house call it Merlot, because we are big fans of Merlot. This is a combination. The 2017 is a combination of Schmidt Vineyard and Copeland Vineyard. So Copeland's the one that we originally planted back in 2000. That's the one that has thinner soils, a little bit more rock and whatnot up there. Schmidt is the newest one, one of the newer ones that we planted about 6 years ago. And it has very, very deep soils. Has a couple of different clones of Merlot on it, and it has a lot more richness and like dark depth to it than like what Copeland had, which is depth, but it also has a little bit of brightness and a little bit more prevalent acidity to it. What we found is by blending the two of them, it's one of those wines. Once you start like blending those two vineyards together, I think like collectively we all said, "Wowza, that's kind of fun." It just kind of gives that deep dark richness and texture from the deeper soils, and it gives that brightness, a little bit of brightness, some really good strong finesse tannins and acid from the shallower soils, and the flavors combine just absolutely amazingly. So this is actually 93% Merlot, 3% Cab Franc, 3% Cab Sauv, and 1% Malbec. I've only had one Merlot in all the years that we've been making wine that has been 100% Merlot, but I'm not so romantic that it has to be 100% varietal. if I can make it just ever so slightly better by filling in the holes somewhere by adding 1% of something and 2% of something, I'm not opposed to it. It doesn't, we're in the flavor business. You guys sell it, I make it. So let's keep the flavor where it needs to be, right?
I love it. We're in the
This wine has about 40,
yeah.
45% new French open. Totally. I mean, are we not?
We
When was the
are.
last time you all sold a bottle of wine that was like a 3.78 pH? I mean, I've never sold one based off of that. I mean, it's all about flavor and mouthfeel and aromatics, in my opinion. And this has this really soft, kind of almost creamy texture on the front half of the palate, and then it changes into a little bit more grippy tannins and a little bit more kind of like acidic, kind of not acid, but like a little bit of brightness on the back. So it goes from like this soft, creamy, almost like cherries and cream type of thing, mouthfeel on the front to you get a little bit more of the grippy kind of tannins, both fruit and barrel on the back end. You get some almost like tobacco leaf type of thing on the back end, which is kind of fun. It adds a nice texture to it. Like you said, it's about 45% new oak, almost all French. I mean, that's just kind of what we dabble with here is French rather than American. And it is, I think the 17 might be one of my, if not my favorite, is one of my favorite Merlots that we've ever had. It was just a crazy cool year that, I mean, on one hand, I hope we don't ever have to replicate those growing conditions, but I'm not afraid of it either. So there you go. Just a absolute, I don't know, it's Merlot. I'm just gonna go leave it at that.
Yeah, people love this wine. I have opened it a few times for a couple different groups and with a lot of happy people. Great like patio with the barbecue going kind of this time of year too, where it's a little cooler at night, like very, very, very well received.
Yeah. It's versatile. And here's the one thing about our stuff, and I appreciate you saying what you just said there, Montana, is that I don't want any of our wines to be one dimensional, either in location or in food, or even in palates, as far as that goes. We want all of our wines to be really good with multiple foods, multiple situations. By and large, they all have to pass the couch test or the deck chair test, as the case might be, because we all drink a lot more, sitting on a couch or a deck chair than we do sitting at a dinner table. And anybody that says differently, I might call you on that one. We all sit with our friends somewhere. So, and we want all of them to be that way. So the Merlot would be good with all kinds of different foods, whether sitting on the deck and grilling stuff, or I've had it with, I love it with salmon. Actually, it has enough that it goes well with salmon. All right, last one, Cab Franc Reserve, 2017. This is 5% Merlot. This is all Copeland fruit. So this is completely designated Copeland Vineyard. And I think Copeland Vineyard was kind of made for Cab Franc. I got to be honest with you. Especially kind of where it sits is a little bit sandier loam. And in this area, I think this area, the Rattlesnake Hills, was kind of made for Cab Franc. And this is a thin twig that I've been bouncing up and down on for a while. But it's, I think that in due time, I think this area or the Yakima Valley as a whole will become known for Cab Franc, kind of like other regions in the country are for certain other varieties. It has just a touch of that kind of greenness, but I think that's important for Cab Franc because otherwise you don't know if it's Merlot, Cab Franc, or Cab Sauv if it doesn't have just a touch of that green. But there's a fine line between not enough and atrocious. It also has this beautiful floral characteristic that I get on it, like dried rose petal. It comes into it every single year. Mix that with like some Bing cherry, and I always get like this new leather kind of characteristic. So what I'm getting at is there's a lot of like different layers of aromatics that go through this that it just kind of sings out of the glass most of the time. And at least from my palate, it does. But it is, in full disclosure, this is my brother and I's favorite variety coming from our area is Cab Franc. So I guess if I'm speaking a little bit more, it sounds like I'm speaking a little bit more highly of it. It's not out of intention. It's probably just out of biasness. But then when you taste it, when you feel it, it's got this real silky elegance that goes all the way through the palate from front to back. You get some of the same flavors that you're tasting, but then there's like this other kind of cornucopia of things that are kind of going through your palate at the same time. And Like this one has a little bit of like tea leaf to it and a little bit of getting a little bit of like almost like green peppercorn to it. That's kind of fun, along with and almost like green fig, like which is kind of fun also. So anyway, but this has about 50% new oak. This has a touch of American oak in it, but it's the only wine that we really use that we purposely use any American oak on.
Why
Just
do you
use
do
the
that?
front.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. What's that?
You were frozen for a second. Why do you
I'm
add
gonna
the
guess
American
your
oak?
question. What was that?
Why the addition of the American oak? Do I have you back?
Cab Franc seems to handle it. There's only a handful of American barrels that I use for the Cab Franc, but they're hybrid barrels. So the belly of the barrel is
There it is. I lost you for a minute there. I didn't get the part about the oak at all.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry.
So take two. So the question is why American oak on Cab Franc versus Merlot or any of the others? And the short answer is it just seems to work a little bit, but it's a little bit of a misnomer. I don't use very much of it. Of all the barrels that we put on the Cab Franc, might only be 5 or 6 barrels that have American in them. And those barrels that I do use with it are a hybrid barrel. Where the heads are French, but the bodies are American. So it's like 2/3 American oak, 1/3 French oak coming out of the same barrel.
I've
And
never
so it
heard of
tempers
that.
down the American. They're cool barrels. Uh, and I only get them from one producer, and they work really well on the Cab Franc. But it tempers that American oak a little bit, so you're not getting quite as much that dill characteristic or that high vanilla characteristic or any of those other things that we've all had from purely American oak wines. But you get a touch of that, right? And so I don't like a little bit of that touch of that dill on the Cab Franc with that natural kind of green thing that Cab Franc has seems to work okay for at least what we're doing with our style. But structurally, and I'll be, I can actually say this with you guys in your market because this is where I had it, is that I went into an account in Golden a number of years ago and had the Cab, we tasted the Cab Franc, and the owner, the proprietor, pulled out he's like, hold on a second. He went behind the bar and he had some Saint Emilion that he had behind the bar that he had open for something. And we tasted them side by side, and structurally I had to do a double take to figure out which one was ours and which one was the Saint Emilion, just because like structurally the similarities were they're so damn close. It was hard to tell the difference. Flavor profile, like I could tell the difference of it, right? Washington versus France, so on and so forth. But just with the natural physiological characteristics of what the grapes are in this area was so similar to what they have over there.
And actually, that's kind of an interesting point. You kind of touched on like the contrasting flavors. Can you just like expand on that a little bit? Because I think that's a really useful thing to discuss when showing the wines.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first one is we don't have any 400-year-old cellars, so we don't have a lot of that earthiness and that kind of, well, I guess earthiness would be the main one, right? I mean, we have more of that New World flavor, New World characteristic in our wines when it comes to that. Ours are going to be a little bit more Bing cherry and a little bit more maybe rose petal, a little bit more overcooked raspberry, kind of stuff like that, because we don't have a 400-year-old cellar. I mean, we just don't. I mean,
yeah.
And I think that the flavor profiles that you're getting from the wines over there, although I think they're becoming younger and fresher, I think sometimes you get a little bit more of that old depth to it, that is just the natural, for lack of a better phrase, terroir of the wine. I mean, terroir is not just soil; it's the whole environment, right? And I think there's just there might be a few different technologies or tanks or whatever that we use here that they're not using, but there's not a whole hell of a lot of difference, but you do notice a little bit of a difference to it. I think winemaking style in the United States has kind of evolved into the kind of the slightly juicier, kind of softer, drink it now type of mentality. And we all know that the French producers are they've been clamoring to be able to move that way for a long time, but they've been fighting an uphill battle with their internal forces, and they're getting there. And don't get me wrong, I actually drink probably more European wines than I drink domestic wines. So I'm not knocking it by any stretch of the imagination. It's just my observation of what it is. So, I mean,
Cool.
I
Well,
just,
thank you so much for showing those, and so great to see you and hear from you. And crew, just real quick, very quick frontline pricing. Riesling at $10, wholesale, in case there's any of our lovely hand sellers watching this. This is wholesale pricing. So Riesling at $10, Merlot $14.32, Hidden Horse is $10.75, Cab Franc is $15.75, and they're all 12 packs. So
yep.
cool. Well, thank you, Matt. We hope to have you back in the flesh soon. But until then,
God, I hope so
thank
too.
you so much for the time.
Absolutely. It'd be great to see you guys. I miss y'all. So
Yeah.
we'll see you soon.
Thanks.